Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess if you guys are new here, and I'm very excited about this video. I have been working on this one for a little while, so I hope you guys enjoy. Before we get into it though, if you guys are not already subscribed, please consider subscribing. It really helps out my channel. Personally, I am a YouTube consumer myself. I don't just make videos, I love watching videos, and in particular, I really love watching book content, and that's sort of where me talking about books on my channel even came from. I have a couple of favorite YouTubers, and not all of them are featured here, but a couple of my go-tos are, and I thought it would be really fun to read some YouTubers' 5-star books. With the new year came a bunch of videos from some of my favorite creators. Basically, each of them talked about all of their favorite books, or maybe like what they rated each of the books, or all of the books that they read in 2024, and I feel like it just sort of inspired me to read those books. These are like the videos that I get a lot of my recommendations from, and I thought it would be really fun to pick 4 YouTubers and pick some of their 5-star books and try reading them, see what I thought about them. I picked Haley Pham, Sarah Caroli, Faith is Reading, and Steph Bohr as my 4 YouTube creators that I was reading books from. Again, these are not all of the creators that I get recommendations from or any of like certain favorite YouTuber by any means, but I just feel like a lot of the books that I know from them I end up enjoying, and so I thought it would be a fun test just to see what I thought of these books and see if I liked them as much as they did. Let's get into it, and let's start with our first book. The first book on the list is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. This is Sarah Caroli's 5-star read. I think it took me a sec to get into it to like understand what I was even reading. I don't know, like I guess I didn't read the synopsis at all for this book, and maybe I should now that I've gotten into it, but I'm about 30% of the way through, and really it's following this whole town. They're a very small town and they're obsessed with hockey, like obsessed. But there's so many different little bits and pieces of everybody's life that you get everyone's perspective all the time. So like within one chapter, you might have 5 or 6 different perspectives, which is kind of cool because I feel like usually you're guessing what another character might be feeling or like what their intentions are, but then like a couple of paragraphs later you'll see their intentions. You also bounce between all of these different characters in like different parts of the world. So like one person might be playing hockey, one person might be at the law firm. You get like full perspective of what's happening in the town. Mostly I feel like it's kind of like a character study, but like on all of these characters, which is very interesting. I've seen so many people rate it 5 stars, or if not 5, just like very highly rated. I don't think I've heard of many people talking bad about this book. I'm intrigued to learn more. I feel like I'm right at that point where I know who's who now, and I know how everyone is sort of connected to some degree at least. Whereas at the very beginning when you're learning so many different characters' names, that's a lot. I also didn't know that this is a series, so I guess there's 3 books total in this series that I would be intrigued to read the rest of them after this. This is my first book by Frederick Bachman, and his writing is so beautiful. I don't know what it is about it exactly. Just the way that he describes things is great, or like the way that he will say something that's very important, but in a very roundabout way. And then by the time he tells you what's happened, you're kind of surprised by how calmly or coolly he's saying something like someone died. It's very interesting. I haven't read something like it, so I'm excited to read more by him too. I have a lot of his books on my TBR, so now that I've actually gotten into one of them, maybe I'll be inspired to read the others. But yeah, I mean, that's all I've really taken from the book so far. There's a big game about to happen, so I have a feeling that that's going to change some things, and there's already been some alluding to something else bigger happening. So I'm guessing that this game is going to be a pivotal point in this book. We'll see. I don't know. The beginning was also a little ominous, so it sounded like something big happened. I'm gonna keep reading and let's see how much I get done today. Otherwise, I'm hoping to finish this book within the next day or so that I can move on to the next one. Just a quick update. It's been taking me a second to read this book just because of like outside factors in my life. I am 44% of the way through Beartown right now, and I'm on chapter 23. And it's so interesting because so far up until this point, the story itself has mostly been about hockey and like this town who's obsessed with hockey and everything hockey and how hockey plays a huge role in the town. And so I was like, okay, well, that's fine. But I've heard this story described described as like such a sad story and like very emotional, and I was wondering how it was gonna get there. And we just learned two things. One is about a character in particular, and they're sort of hiding something from nearly everyone that they know. I think a few people maybe know, but for the most part, they're hiding it from everyone else. And then the second thing is one of the sad things that happens. And if you're interested in reading this book, I definitely recommend looking up the trigger warnings. The scene was crazy, and I'm still in the aftermath of the scene. So if you guys have read this, you know what happens directly after. And I'm curious, I don't know, I'm just like curious to know what's going to happen. So I'm gonna keep reading for today. I have about 7 hours left of the book in total, and I'm just gonna try to like read as much as I possibly can today while I have the time. At minimum, I want to know what happens with this particular character, because I don't know what's gonna happen with her. I'm nervous for her, so we'll see. Anyway, that's the update for now. I will update you guys once I know more about these characters and anything else that happens that feels impactful. Honestly, so far I really like the storytelling and the writing. It's interesting to have very little dialogue but still understand what's happening in each of your characters' brains, and to get so many different perspectives in a book is very unique too. So I'm really liking it so far. Okay, so first things first, the person that I was like a little bit nervous about earlier on, I like know what's up with her now, so we are good. But I completely understand, like at the beginning of this book, there's like one sad-ish thing that's happening. Like you kind of just like feel bad for somebody. But as you continue reading, it gets so many things are so sad, and there's like so many different storylines that you're following, and all these different characters. You're getting all of their perspectives, which is very unique, and I actually really like that about this book. I think I might have already said that before, but truly I haven't read anything like it. Every character's storyline, it's one of those things where you realize that you really don't know what's happening in that person's life, and there's these like weird, I don't want to call them missed connections, but like things that are happening where like people aren't able to communicate with one another. Like they assume something about another person that maybe is not true, and so then they're like upset at them. I don't know, just like so many different things, and they don't realize that like all of the other people are also going through something in that same moment. And it's very interesting, but it's also very sad. Yeah, it's more than just a town that loves hockey. So I see so far what everyone's talking about when they were talking about how sad it is. I do feel like you had to get like 35 to 40% of the way through to see some of those pieces, and at 50% of the way through it's like totally picking up. I think too, part of what makes it sad is that I actually care about each of my characters. Like I think because I'm in their brains, I feel like I know them, I feel like I want more for them, and I just actually have sympathy and empathy for each of them. Where some books, I just like it's harder to connect to a character for whatever reason, and so then, you know, you just kind of like don't care if something's wrong, which sounds cruel, but it's the truth. So it's very, very interesting. So anyway, I'm gonna continue reading. I will continue to update you guys as I learn more about these characters. This is, yeah, I don't even know if we have like a main character because we know so many different characters. I love every single one of them, and I don't know if I have a favorite. I know I have a least favorite, but I don't know if I have a favorite yet. Good morning, you guys. So I tried to read as much as I could last night, and today I'm just reading some more before I have to start work. I have probably about 5 hours left of this book now. Oh my God. I was saying yesterday or last night that I don't know if I have a favorite character, and that's the truth of it. I was realizing that like the cool thing about this book is that you don't just like automatically know people or like get to know your characters. It's literally like you know one character, and then that character interacts with someone, so then you get to know that character, and then one of these two characters interacts with someone else, and then you get to know that character. And it's so fascinating that it's like you might not know who someone is or how they relate to somebody else until they meet one of your characters, and then you get a branch off of who that person is, which is such a cool way to do any kind of storytelling. Anyway, those are my thoughts so far. I'm about 60 something percent, like 62% of the way through, something like that. So I'm gonna keep reading before work starts. I will check in with you guys next time something crazy happens. Good morning, you guys. It's been a second, I think, since I last spoke with you. I can't remember the last time that I talked with you guys, but I've been still reading Beartown and I'm about 80% of the way through and I'm loving it. I see why everyone has been rating it so highly. I didn't really read any of the synopses of any of these books before I'm diving into them. So all I knew was that this one was about a town that loves hockey. In a way, that's kind of what it is about, but there's something that happens. I don't remember like at what point in the book, but something happens maybe like 45% of the way through. And now the whole town is sort of being split up between different sides. And what happens, first of all, is just like really sad. The way that everyone is handling it is very interesting. So like, for example, the girl that is involved in this, she seems like pretty mature. She's telling her friend not to sit with her because she doesn't want her friend to be associated with her at all. Like she doesn't want her friend to like be associated and people stop talking to her. She'll console her mom a lot, which is very interesting because her mom should be the adult, but at the same time her mom understands like what's happening, like why, or like the repercussions of what happened. So it's a very interesting dynamic, and just seeing this whole town split apart and like decide to play politics when something bad happens, it's just very interesting to see how all of it unfolds, and it just mimics real life so deeply. I've been really liking it. I don't know what I'm gonna rate it yet, but also I think that last 20% chunk, like so much can happen in 20% of a book that it's probably gonna depend on that. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm gonna keep reading. You guys, it's Thursday today and I haven't checked in with you guys. I did do some reading this morning, but I haven't really done a whole lot of reading like during my lunch break or anything like that because I did a workout because I can't do it in the evening. There's P crying as always. But I wanted to update you guys on what I was reading this morning because I'm still reading Beartown. Something crazy is happening. Like, I think something crazy is happening at least. I don't really know how else to explain that, but basically one of our main well, there's so many different main characters, but one of our characters that is very important to the story, I feel like she's about to do something and I don't think that it's something that's reversible, if you know what I mean. And I'm a little scared for her, a little nervous, I'm not gonna lie. I just feel like something crazy is about to happen. It's been very interesting. I have so little left in the book, but I just haven't had a chance to read like at all, so I think I'll probably finish maybe tonight or tomorrow morning. I'm just so excited to learn what happens. I do still feel like because I've spent so much time with the book, I care so much more about each of the characters. That's sort of where I've been at. I'm pretty sure next time I update you guys, I will have finished the book, so I'll be able to give you guys final thoughts on everything. And obviously the whole story won't be wrapped up, but at least this particular book will be, and then we'll be able to move on to the next one, which I am excited for. But yeah, that's where we're at. So just wanted to give you guys an update, and I'll probably talk with you guys some more tomorrow. Okay, I have about 30 minutes left of Beartown and I'm actually kind of nervous to finish this book. I know that sounds so silly, but I'm like really scared of something that I think is going to happen. I really hope it doesn't. In a way, like I want our character to get the revenge that she's seeking, but I'm also scared that she's going to do something that I don't want her to do that will ruin her life. So we'll see. We're gonna read. I'm gonna see what happens. I'm gonna try to finish it right now. Yeah, I'm just nervous. Oh man, I just finished the book, guys. I don't know what to rate it. I feel like it's between a 4 and a 5 star. I feel like if I read it again, I would give it a 5 star. The only reason why I don't want to give it 5 stars is because it was a little slow at parts, but I'm so glad by the way that it ended. Like, it was so powerful. And it was like the best possible way that it could have ended. I'm intrigued to read the rest of the series. I know that a lot of YouTubers that I watch have given this one 5 stars. This one was Sarah Caroli's 5-star read, and I hear that the rest of the series is amazing. Makes people cry, the whole thing. The whole book is just very emotional. I feel like this was such a unique story. This is one of those books that's gonna stick with me for so long because just the way that it was written was so unique. The way that you get literally every single person's perspective was unique. I've never had that in a book before. I think I mentioned this earlier in this vlog, but this has been taking me a while, obviously, but how each person fiction, if you know a character and that character interacts with another character, then you get to know that character. But there's not just like a random person introduced out of nowhere that you're now like getting to know. You like get to know them through context of who they know, which is a really cool concept. So I think I just convinced myself that I should give this one 5 stars, mostly because I know that this is gonna stick with me. And also I feel like this is my very first Fredrik Backman book, but everyone says that more of his books are like different than this one, but this one is one that convinced me that I basically want to read every single book that he's ever written. I guess I have to give it 5 stars. I don't know whose book I'm gonna read next, so I think I'm gonna just like take a second to debrief because that was a very heavy book. Kind of like look through the list of books that I have that I wanted to read here, and then we'll continue from there because yeah, that was very emotional and very heavy, but so good and really well written. Like, wow. Okay, 5 stars for sure. Good morning, you guys. Today is the next day, it's Saturday, and I decided that I'm going to start off with The Unmaking of June Farrow. I'm actually gonna go pop over to the library, see if maybe they have this and a few other books in person. I just feel like reading physically right now for some reason, but this one is Faith's Reading Things. You guys have probably seen her before on the internet. She's a really fun YouTuber, and I just like love her videos. They're so cozy. She's kind of a quirky person, but I feel like I love her personality and just, I don't know, all of her videos are so fun. I saw that recently she marked this as a 5 star for herself. She said this has become one of her all-time favorites. There's a few others that she's mentioned are 5 stars or are also her favorites, but this one feels the most like her. I actually almost wanted to pick up Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia for Fairies, I think is what it's called, but she actually rated that one 4.5 stars. So this one is like more whimsical. I don't know everything that it's about, but so far what I do know is that there's this person who her mom had disappeared before she was born, and then she was just basically like dumped in like an alley, and then someone in the town found her, and her grandma who she was living with has now passed, and I don't really know much else from that. Like that's really it, and you get that from like the first 3 pages. So I'm gonna dive into this today, but I want to go see if we have the physical copy first. So let's go to the library and then we'll dive in. I went over to the library and they were closed because of the holiday. I guess there's a holiday on Monday, but I guess that means that they're closed for the whole weekend. So anyway, I went to Barnes & Noble and I picked up the copy. I just felt like I wanted to read a hard copy. I don't know why, it just was calling to me. So I did that. It's kind of funny. I was discovering that these pages were cut a little unevenly, which I always love when you like find little weird quirks in the printing system. Like not if a page is like upside down, but when you can tell that this batch is just like a little different, it's always really fun. I also picked up Clockwork Orange, which I will not be reading in this video, but figured I would mention it. We're gonna start reading this one. I'm going to sit probably outside or over here with P. He's kind of just like plopped on the rug, but I can't imagine he won't want to be outside with me. So I'm gonna start reading this one. I'm really excited for it. It sounds pretty interesting, and you know, it was rated 5 stars by Faith, so hopefully it's a 5 star for me too. I'm only like a few pages into this book. Something that's interesting is it's set in North Carolina, but the way that it's written so far is so like magical and mystical that it almost feels like it's in like some unknown area, like some magical world, but it's in North Carolina, which is interesting. I don't know if that feeling is gonna stick, but I just find that very interesting and very whimsical, which is a word that Faith uses a lot when she describes books that she really enjoys, is like this whimsical or cozy feeling. So I kind of understand what she's saying. I'm only a few pages in, so let's keep reading. Okay, it's been a sec since I last checked in with you guys. That door still freaks me out every time it's open like that. I don't know why. I hate that I can see that. But anyway, I got into some comfy clothes. It's been a sec, and I was a little distracted earlier because I was just like hanging out with Ryan, but I am now on chapter 5 of The Unmaking of June Farrow. I love my Kindle, but there is definitely something about just holding a book that I love. So every now and then it's actually really fun to physically hold something. But I'm on chapter 5, which is 46 pages into the book, and it's very interesting. So it's kind of a mix of a few different genres. Basically, it's like a mystery, but also like magical realism. Yeah, so I think I was describing earlier that it's so interesting because the way that they describe the town that they live in feels more magical than it actually is. Like it's in North Carolina, but it feels like it's like a magical fantasy place that like no one's ever heard of, which is kind of a cool, unique thing that they do here. Basically, this girl, June, she belongs to this family, the Farrow family. All of the women are known for this like mysterious curse. So for example, her mom disappears and like no one can find her, and all of the women slowly get sick and kind of like, I'm not sure what the word is, but like basically they like
it seems like they kind of go between two different realms of reality. And so because of this, June decides she's never going to get married, she's never going to have children, because she knows that she's effectively cursed to have this happen to her. She doesn't know her own mom because her mom disappeared when she was pregnant with her and just like dropped her off in an alley. And so she's grown up with her grandma, but her grandma just recently died. So she's on her own now and she's in her 30s, but she's like not planning on having a family, which bums her out because she's been wanting a family and she would love to have love, but she wants this curse to die with her. She like does not want anyone else to go through the pain that she's been through with her family. So anyway, her grandma dies and she ends up receiving this letter that has a photo in it that's really sus. So now she's kind of like, she's questioning her sanity basically, and it's very interesting so far. I know it's gonna get like much more like fantastical in the sense of like actual magical realism, so I'm excited to see how all of that plays out. But for now, I mean, honestly, it's a pretty good book. The one thing I will say, which sounds so silly, like the way that this author writes is so beautiful. It's very lyrical and like just like so descriptive. I don't know why, but when things get too descriptive, my brain gets like lost in what's happening and like the descriptions that are being made. I kind of like lose track of where we are. So like she'll describe the way that a house looks and I have no idea where in the house we are. So I've been having to like reread paragraphs, but then there's other parts that like she's just kind of describing things normally, and so then I'm able to read those parts a lot faster. So it's definitely taking me a little bit longer than normal, but I think that like as I get to know who the characters are and things like that, like I feel like at this point I know who the characters are. When you have that plus you're learning everyone in like a whole new world, then it's a lot. But where I stand, I think I'm doing okay now. I'm gonna continue to read and see how far we get tonight. I wanted to ideally finish this within the next like couple of days, so I do feel like this one's gonna be a fast read, especially because there's like a huge mystery element to it, which always just makes me want to read faster. So I'm very excited for that. Plus this one's short, it's 315 pages. So I think we'll be able to get through it. But we're on chapter 5 and I'm excited to see what happens next. Good morning, you guys. Today is Sunday and I'm currently reading Unmaking of June Farrow. I made it to chapter 9, I believe. We're getting to the point, there's on the synopsis in the back, it mentions that she starts to see this red door, I believe, and basically she's eventually going to go through it, and we've just gotten to the part where she goes through the red door. So far, I'm pretty like entranced by what this book is about and like what's happening in the book. I was saying before that like some of the writing kind of gets in the way for me in terms of like being able to actually like understand where we are, but I think that's definitely getting better. It's very, very descriptive, but it's nice now because now I can like understand exactly where we are, whereas before it was kind of like confusing me, or like it was just a little too much, and so then I was getting trapped up in it. But I've moved past that, so I'm just going to have my latte here. I'm gonna read for a little while and I will let you guys know when something crazy happens, but I really feel like this is a pivotal part in this book, so very excited for that. I have made it to chapter 16, which is on page 164 of this book. I'm about halfway, I think I'm just past halfway through. This book is getting so good. I've basically just been reading like all day. Basic things that we know are our main character, June. She is able to time travel, and also we're like getting a better sense of how everyone is connected and who is who and how they connect back to her. So there's like different people that we know in this book, but when she time travels for the first time, first of all, she doesn't have a lot of control over it, which is a very interesting concept. And then also when she does time travel, something crazy happens. So it's like, it's so interesting because it's so genre bending. Like we have a murder mystery now happening, which is also crazy. I'm really, really liking this one a lot. I really understand why this is Faith's 5-star. I wish I actually like Googled it because I wish this was like some kind of movie or TV show, because this would be such a good thing to watch. So I'm very excited for this one. Also, it's just like pretty fast paced. Like it keeps me entertained. I'm gonna keep reading, but I just wanted to update you guys on my thoughts so far, and I'm absolutely obsessed with it. So we just made it to chapter 24. We're on page 250, which means we have like 65 pages left, I think. Turn off the paper lamp. I had a feeling that this was the direction the book was gonna go, and I'm happy about it, but also sad about, like, I'm torn because I don't know which life I want her to be living, if that makes sense. Like, it's hard because I can imagine, like, you're getting glimpses of what her other life was like, and it's hard to decide which life you think that you want her to live, if that makes sense. It's extra complicated because the way that the time travel works in this book, it's like you can't keep jumping to different time zones or whatever. Time zones? Not time zones. Time. You can't jump to different time. You have like a limited amount of jumps that you can do. If she leaves this time, then she's stuck. She basically only has like one left. Yeah, I think I'm gonna try to finish this tonight. I'm really liking, I can't imagine this not being a 5-star. Like, truly, I've been eating it up. I've loved every second of it. I've just like wanted to continue reading for hours. I'm really liking it. I'm glad that I picked this one up. 2 for 2 on the 5 stars from other creators that I watch, which is a really cool idea. Like, obviously I watch all of these creators because I like the books that they're talking about, but I don't always rate them the exact same way. So I'm actually very excited that both of these so far have been 5 stars. My camera's dying. I'm gonna get back to reading and we'll see how this book ends. Hi guys, I just wanted to update you guys because it's been a couple of days since I last chatted with you. I finished The Unmaking of June Farrow and I gave this one 5 stars. I loved this book. I have a few different spots that I highlighted and I like it a lot. I'm so happy that I got a chance to read this one. I wasn't sure like what to expect really. I was very nervous by the thought of reading a book that was magical realism, which sounds so silly, but it's just not something that I've typically read in the past. So was just a little bit nervous about it. I took my chance and I'm so glad that I did. I liked that this book was romance, a murder mystery, magical realism, like so many different things in one. I don't even know what type of genre you would call this. It's not a perfect book. I think that there's a few things that I wish, like I liked in some ways that the amount of time travel was limited based off of like the rules of how everything worked in this world. But to that same point, I did not like that it was limited because then I only got a small snippet of one of the characters at the very beginning. And then we basically like lost touch with that character because she wasn't able to go back to that time zone. So in some ways I liked it because of the constraints, but in other ways, yeah, I just feel like I missed a little bit of it. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think I was talking earlier in like about this book that the language was a little fluffy for me, so it was making it a little bit harder to comprehend. But as I continued to read, I really got used to Adrienne Young's writing and just like how lyrical it can be, and also just like things started to pick up, so some of those descriptions weren't as hard for me to understand. So really enjoyed it. I highly recommend this one. It's very fun and feels low stakes at some points, even though it's like, it's still high stakes, but it's not high stakes like war type of high stakes, if that makes sense. So really liked this one a lot. I also picked up Dance of Thieves, which I have on my Kindle. This one I'm nervous about. It's a fantasy romance from what I understand. This one is Steph Bohr's 5-star book. She said that this is one of her favorite books. This is technically a duology, so this one and then Vow of Thieves is the second one. I had no idea that there's a whole trilogy before this book, so jumping into this was a little confusing. The Kindle edition does not have any kind of map. It doesn't have any definitions or anything like that, which I guess from what I understand on Reddit, the like print copy does have that. So maybe I should have gotten a print copy of this book. I don't know, but either way, I've just like, I read the first 2 chapters and I was so confused. So then I like paused for a day and then I picked it back up and I reread those first 2 chapters. And now I feel like I know where I am, but a lot of the words are just like so confusing. It'll be like, I'm a Raton and I'm from random word and I'm holding another random word. And I'm just like, I can't visualize any of that. I looked it up on Reddit and a lot of people were feeling the same way, and they were saying that once the romance starts to pick up, like it doesn't really matter and like you're not actually losing a lot, and you don't need to have read the first trilogy in order to understand what's happening in this book. So I'm just gonna trust the process. I'm gonna try to continue reading. I think I'm going to read a little bit on my lunch break today because I want to just get into this book already and like know what it's about. That's where I'm at right now. So we're gonna try. I'm gonna continue reading. I read 2 chapters from Kazi and now I'm on the chapter with Jace, which I think is the male main character, and I believe they're the ones who have a romance, which is not actually a spoiler because I think that's like somewhere in the back of the
book, like on the synopsis. Let's just see what happens. I'm hopeful that this picks up quickly, but this is the first book in this video that has not immediately felt like, ooh, I can kind of see why this is a 5-star. Although I've heard really great things about Dance of Thieves, so we shall see. But I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna start reading and let's see how far we get.
Hello you guys. I think the last time that I checked in with you guys, I tried starting Dance of Thieves and I put it down mostly because I didn't want to put myself in any kind of slump. So now we're back and I picked up Dance of Thieves again. I got it as a hardcover mostly because I thought that having the actual maps would be helpful. Still doesn't have any definitions or like glossary or anything like that in here, but what I'm gonna do is listen to this as an audiobook while reading along, and I'm gonna try to see if that helps because I just want to actually give this its fair shot before I totally DNF it. I've heard really good things about this book, so I want to actually give it a shot. We're gonna try it out, we're gonna see how it goes, and yeah, I've heard that like the first little bit is a little confusing, but then once you get into the romance, it's really fun. So I'm hopeful that that is the case. Let's get started. I'm gonna start now and I will let you guys know how it goes. I read the first 2 chapters from like with the audiobook and I think it went a lot better than the first time I tried reading this book. Last time I got through part of chapter 3 and that's when I sort of gave up because there were too many things that just didn't make sense to me. But the audiobook I think is helping. So I'm gonna continue listening to it for a little bit while I read. I like also listening while I'm looking at the pages. So we're gonna do that for a little, see how far we get. I think at some point I'll be able to just read without listening to it, but I don't know, I don't mind it. I have like 5 or 4 hours left on my Spotify plan for the month. So I have a few hours of listening time basically to like get me through the beginning of this book and then I'll be able to move on. So far I'm just getting some setup of like who characters are, what the world is, that kind of thing. Going into this anticipating that it will get better because that's what everyone online says. Okay, I have officially made it about 50 pages in. I'm now on chapter 7 and I feel like listening to the audiobook really helped with just like better understanding what is happening in this book. I do want to try reading it not with the audiobook. I don't know, like maybe I'll give it a little bit longer, but I feel like I like understand where I'm at, and then if for whatever reason it just still feels like ugh, I'm struggling, then maybe I'll go back to audiobook. But for now, I feel like I'm okay. Basically, we have this world and there is a piece of the world that is overrun by a family, the Ballingers, who has sort of taken over. They've effectively just like taken over this piece of land and I don't know, like I think they're criminals? I'm not really like fully understanding that, but in the blurb here it says that they're outlaws, so there's that. And then there's this other group of people who are the Rattan, and the Rattan are a part of like this group of people that serve the queen, and they're like not quite outlaws the same way that this whole family is, but like they're people who've sort of like been reformed and they're now serving the kingdom or the queendom. So that's how I'm understanding it so far. Now our 2 main characters have met like officially and they're in close proximity to one another as well. So we have Jace and we have Kazi. Kazi is a girl and Jace is the guy, and they are the 2, I believe, main characters. That's I think all the important stuff that I've learned. I just need to get into it, so I'm gonna keep reading. But so far, for right now, I think I'm liking it and I feel like I understand it a little bit better. We're gonna try it without the audiobook. Let's see how we go, and if I need the audiobook again, I have a few more hours left on Spotify, so I'm trying to like use them wisely so that if I am getting confused about a section, I can just like go back to listening and kind of use it as like a little bit of a crutch. Quick update on this book. I am on chapter 16, which is page 115. We are at a point where some of the romance has started, which like this is a romance book. It's supposed to be romance. Because this is a duology, I saw this in like a rating as well, but I'm surprised that it only took this long. They're enemies, remember? So like this long for us to have some sort of romance happen, where like I thought that maybe it would take a little bit longer. That being said, I'm not upset by it. I actually think that it's pretty cute. This is young adult, so it's like very wholesome romance, I guess you could say. Like they're, you know, like helping each other, that kind of thing. And it kind of gives me the same vibes that Powerless gave me when I first read Powerless, between Kai and Payton. So I actually kind of think it's cute, and I'm curious to see what happens because one of our main characters, she doesn't know that they're going, like, basically she's being lied to. I'm curious now that they've had some sort of like romantic moment, how she's going to take the lie when she finds out, because she has to be finding out within like any minute now. But at the same time, despite the fact that he lied to her, he's doing like really cute and wholesome things. So I don't know, it's just very interesting. So I'm curious to see how this goes. I want to continue reading. I actually am really liking it, so I'm glad that I gave it a second chance. If you guys are interested in this one, definitely just like give it a beat and like either try the audiobook first or just move past a few of the, whoa, he just jumped up on the bed. Move past some of the terms that maybe you don't use. A few of them, you kind of figure out what they mean. A few of them are actually like mentioned, like what does that mean? And then someone says it. So eventually you learn. It did become a little overwhelming for me, but again, I'm glad that I moved past it and was able to like get to the meat of the story. So those are the thoughts so far, and I will update you guys as I continue to read. Okay, we're getting to the point where our character is realizing that she was lied to. Curious to see how this ends for her and for like this whole relationship that's happening, but she's about to realize right now that she's being lied to. I officially made it to chapter 18. I'm still so early on in this book. I am on page 133 and there's like 500 and something pages in this book. But something that's interesting to me about just like romances in general, and obviously knowing that this book is a romance, I know that my main characters are going to be interested in each other. I know that they're going to end up together. So whenever I go into these books, instead of wanting more from that angle, I kind of look toward like the angle of how is it that they're going to get together, or how does their story play out, and if that story is good enough. Because I mean, again, like just knowing that it's a romance, it's like you know what's gonna happen. Like you're introduced to two characters, you're getting both perspectives, you already know what's gonna happen, if that makes sense. So I was just kind of thinking about that, where it's like I know, like I had looked something up and I got a little bit of a spoiler, but I already knew what it was going to be, so it's not really a spoiler. So anyway, that was just interesting to me. But so far it seems like, you know, obviously she's a little upset about the fact that she's been lied to for the last however long that they've been together, but at the same time, in some way, she's kind of looking at it like a blessing in disguise. So I'm intrigued to see how the rest of this plays out. I think there's definitely some little like bits and pieces here and there that I'm still not fully understanding how things work in this world, or like why something would be happening, but it's really not something that like I feel like I have to know, especially because this is primarily a romance. I feel like I'm okay with just letting some of the politics slide and focus in on like how our main characters are working with each other and like what that is feeling like. So that's sort of where I'm at with all of it, but I'm intrigued to see how it continues to play out, because again, we still have like, I'm a fifth of the way through the book. I have so much left to read, so it'll be interesting to learn some more. Let's keep reading and I will continue to update you guys. I wanted to let you guys know I got to the 50% mark in Dance of Thieves, and right at the 50% mark is when this romance starts to pivot a little bit, which is kind of a fun, I don't know, it's just fun, I guess. I still feel like the politics in here, like they're not, I don't even know like exactly how to describe it. It's not that it's super confusing by any means, but it's just not explained. So you don't understand, at least I'm not understanding, the depth of what each thing means, or like why it's so important that certain things are happening, because it's just not explained. But I'm excited to keep reading and excited to see how the next 50% of the book plays out now that we're having a lot more of this romance set up for us. Hello you guys, I am now in San Luis Obispo, so my background is all different. We're in the hotel right now, but I'm currently reading Dance of Thieves, and I figured I would update you guys on something. This novel, it's kind of like has fantasy elements, but then like sometimes it's not so obvious that those fantasy elements are present. So like for example, it'll like briefly mention dragons, but then there's no real, like there's no other dragons around or anything like that. So there's this one particular scene, they were mentioning death, or like someone basically basically like talking in our main character's head about like, hey, you need to get out of here right now. It's one of those things where it's like I couldn't tell if that was like fantasy novel, like there's actually something happening, or if that was like, you know, something just like the vibes were off kind of idea. But it happened again, and like our other main character is like, yeah, her eyes were like glazed over and like something was weird about her. So I'm wondering if like we're going in that direction, or if I'm just like totally misinterpreting this side of the fantasy novel. This is where I'm talking about like the fantasy aspects of this book are a little bit confusing, because it's like I feel like you kind of have to make it clear what's possible in a fantasy novel, because anything is possible, you know, like you need to like establish boundaries for that world almost. I don't know, maybe something's gonna happen, or maybe it's just like she has an inkling on something and then that's why. We're so close. I feel like I've been reading this book forever, but that's just because it's a long book, but I've been so intrigued the entire time. So really that's like a testament to this author's writing, because she can tell a story. I really, really like it. Like I like the way that she taught, like, I don't know, the way that she writes, because I'll see, sometimes I get overwhelmed, especially on the Kindle, since it like tells you how much time you have left in a chapter. If I see like a 30-minute chapter, 45-minute chapter, I tend to get overwhelmed for like any book. But for this book, like I initially have that feeling of being overwhelmed, and then I start reading and I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, and she breaks each chapter, if it's longer, into like little chunks, and I don't know, I like the structure of it. I like the writing itself. I like the story. So I'm excited to learn more, and I'm just curious to see what other fantasy elements come out in this book. I just got home from my trip. Ryan and I went to San Luis Obispo, and I literally got home, showered, put a few things away, and I'm getting back to Dance of Thieves. I literally have 20 pages left of this book. I have been reading in the car and just like reading in the hotel when we had some downtime, like all of those things. And yeah, I'm literally at 20 pages left. So we're gonna finish it right now. But before I finish it, I wanted to give you guys some thoughts. I gave some more thought to like the political issues happening, and I realized that like I kind of wish that I would have known that there was a trilogy before this, because I probably would have read it. And obviously like now that I'm reading the duology first, I have a few spoilers, but I like 99.9% will probably read the trilogy, because I'm like very intrigued. Even if I have those spoilers, like I want to know how everything happens, and now that I know this world a little bit more, I feel like I'll have more of an understanding of like what's going on in that other book or in the other series. As I continue to read this book, I feel like I'm getting more insight as to how the politics played out in the original trilogy as well. And that's also why I'm like, I'll more than likely read that, because that sounds so interesting to me, and I think I'll like that a lot more. Although I know it's still also romance heavy, but it just sounds interesting to me. So those are my thoughts on like the political stuff. In terms of like the drama that's happening between our main characters, I obviously don't want to give any spoilers, but I do feel like we're gonna have to hang on to what's happening until the second book. Yeah, there's just a lot of lying and deceiving and different values, I guess, and on both sides, and like how both sides are, I mean, it's kind of Shakespearean, like they're from totally opposite sides that it's really hard for them to see each other's side. They also like have to think about what like their people are going to think of them, and they can't just bend over backwards for another territory or country or whatever it is. So it's very interesting. The love story is very interesting. I'm glad that it just didn't go from like 0 to 100 and starting to do like everything for that person and remembering where you're coming from, because that's like how the world works too. Like you can't just throw your whole life away for somebody just because you've met somebody. Yeah, I like that part of it. So we're gonna read the last 20 pages and we'll see what happens next, because I already know that I'm gonna want to read the next book like ASAP, which is so funny because I almost like couldn't get into this. We're gonna go read. I have it on both Kindle and hard copy obviously, so let's go finish this book and I will update you on my final thoughts. Hello you guys, it has been some time since I last talked to you guys, but it's been no time for you guys, so I wanted to update you guys because I have since finished Dance of Thieves, which I rated 4 stars, and I also ended up finishing Vow of Thieves, which was not on the docket for this particular video, but with how much I struggled with getting into Dance of Thieves, I kind of just wanted to jump right into it and like make sure that I remembered as many characters as possible, like all of the like political stuff that was happening, because I just found that, or I felt like I was going to miss out on some of that. So I rated both books 4 stars. I'm gonna talk about mostly Dance of Thieves because that was the 5-star book for this particular video. I feel like I actually wrote down in my reading journal what my thoughts were, so I'm gonna just kind of put it out there and I'll just kind of censor
whatever it is that maybe would be a spoiler. I said the beginning confused me a bit because I got thrown into the world, but once I understood it, I liked it. I feel like we could have gotten into the politics more, but I think that'll come in book 2. I felt like it was a little insta-lovey at times, but I was always excited to pick it up. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I feel like book 2, I do feel like I got more of the politics that I was looking for, but I think the reason why I was feeling like it was insta-lovey was because I did not realize in book 1, I think it was like explicitly said in book 2, but I didn't realize until that point that there would be times where like months would pass, but the way that it was written would feel like it was maybe days. So like they would talk about like going from one area in like this world all the way to another kingdom, and again the way that it was written would make it feel like, I don't know, that it was a couple of days. And then in book 2 it literally said like it took us 3 months to go from one place to the other, and that was the first time where I was like, oh whoa, like no wonder they're, you know, so in love with each other, because they've literally spent years at this point together. So that was a little interesting. So those are my thoughts. Yeah, overall I think I liked it. This is the first 4-star in this like reading challenge, but I don't think all of them are going to be able to be 5 stars, and that kind of checks out because I feel like Steph's recommendations on YouTube are always the ones that are sort of hit or miss for me. I'm either gonna love or hate, so that actually makes a lot of sense. Hello, good morning you guys. Today is Sunday, March 9th. It's been a while since I checked in on this particular vlog, but I wanted to check in with you guys because I think I'm finally going to be starting Ministry of Time. I don't know why I've been a little intimidated by this book. This is Haley Pham's favorite book from last year, but she has also mentioned that she almost DNF'd it when she was still 70% of the way through the book, but then when she got past that point, she ended up loving it, and it like totally changed her perspective on everything. So that kind of scares me a little bit. So I think what we're gonna do today, I wanna just start getting into it a little bit, and I'm gonna do that by reading it as an audiobook. So I'm gonna get ready right now. I'm gonna go on a run and I'm gonna listen to the audiobook because that is when I'm most successful listening to audiobooks. I just like actually focus and pay attention to what's happening in the story when I'm running. I don't know why that is. So I think that's gonna be the plan. I don't really know what we're gonna get ourselves into on this one, but I'm hoping that I really like it. So let's get started, let's get changed for our run, and then we will start the Ministry of Time. Okay, I just showered and, well, I ran. I ended up running 5 miles, and then I had some lunch, and then I showered. So my hair is wet, and it always is a little funky while it's wet. But I ended up reading, I think, the first 2 chapters of the Ministry of Time while I was doing my run, and it's actually very interesting. So I didn't fully understand what it was about before I started listening to the book. I think part of the reason I was intimidated by this book was, one, because I just didn't fully understand what it was exactly about, and then 2, the chapters are just so long. Like every other chapter, it kind of switches between perspectives. So one chapter will follow our male main character, and then our second chapter will follow our female main character. The male main character, his chapters are like maybe 5 or 6 minutes total, but the female main character, her chapters are like 1 hour and 15 minutes, which like just, I don't even know what that would equate to in pages, but just seeing that, like the total book time to read on the Spotify app is only 10 hours, which doesn't feel like a lot, but there's only 23 chapters, and when a chapter is that long, it's just intimidating. I don't know how else to say it. I think sometimes just like getting into it and reading it as an audiobook is just so much easier. I'm so much more focused when I'm running too. Anyway, with all that being said, I ended up listening to the first 2 chapters. So that was basically the first 2 hours, and I have about 8 hours left of the audiobook. It's pretty interesting. It's basically about this ministry this is all like based in London. So this ministry who has learned how to time travel or like create time travel, but they haven't really explored it too deeply. So what they're doing is they're taking people from past timelines, and they're taking people from like a bunch of different years because they want to have a wider variety of samples, and they're taking these people, in theory, in their timeline they would have died, and so when they're supposed to die, instead they take them and they bring them to, I think it's set in 2016 roughly. It was talking about things like Spotify and smoking a joint and stuff like that. So it's like these people from the 1600s are thrown into a world where Spotify exists, and they're like, what is happening? It's very interesting.
interesting. They have to teach them, there's like these bridges, which are, that's what our like female main character is. And she is basically assigned to one of these people. And for a year, she has to help him specifically, just like acclimate to the world, like what the new stuff is, like different terms that you can or cannot use, or like what happened in history, so that they can get familiar with the current timeline that they're in. The goal is just to sort of figure out if time travel is even possible and how easy it is to integrate new people into society. Basically, within the first 2 chapters, you're just seeing the female main character, who she doesn't have a name, and then the male main character, I think it's Captain Gore is what his name is. Just seeing them like acclimate, seeing her teach him a few things about the world and that kind of thing. It is interesting because it talks a lot about like her being Cambodian but not looking Cambodian, or talks about different historical events obviously that happened that maybe he missed. And in those ways it feels almost like historical fiction, but at the same time it's like clearly fiction, and there's clearly something going on there. Like I don't know if I'm just like reading into something or like didn't fully get it, but like it feels like there's something going on there with them. So we'll see. I will update you guys on how far I get into it and what my thoughts are. Hello you guys, it has been another couple of days since I last checked in with you, but I started reading The Ministry of Time as an audiobook, mostly because I was like pretty nervous about the book, I'm not gonna lie, but I felt like because the chapters were pretty long, it did a good job of locking me into the story and like helping me understand what the story was even about, because I think I needed that a little bit more than what the blurb was giving me. But it also made me feel like I wasn't paying close enough attention to fully grasp every detail that I really wanted to be grasping. So I decided to pick up the physical copy from the library, and I'm gonna give it another shot. So I think I'm just gonna start from the beginning. Is that crazy? Because like I already know what happens in the first few chapters, but I just feel like it's, I don't know, I feel like I'll enjoy it better that way. So I'm gonna give it a go. It's like 9 o'clock tonight, so I don't know how much I'll read tonight, but we have the whole weekend, so we're gonna see. I think it's only like 330 pages. I am excited to read it. I feel like I have in the past gotten a lot of recommendations from Haley fam, so I think it'll be a good read. I'm just nervous about it. I don't know why I'm so nervous. I think I needed to just like stop. This is one of those moments where like looking up reviews on Goodreads or like watching booktube is not always the best. I kind of like get in my own head about what I'm reading, so I have to just stop and just put all of that aside and try to read, because I think that I'll enjoy it better that way. Hello you guys, good morning. Today is Sunday, March 15th, 16th. I am currently reading Ministry of Time physically this time, and I am on page 50. And one thing that I'll say is I'm actually really glad that I chose to read it physically, because there's a lot of things that I'm noticing. Like this is like a whole survey of like things that our main character has to fill out about her. They call it an expat, but it's like an expat from history, not like your standard, like what you would define an expat as. The reason I like that I'm reading it physically, or like even on my Kindle or whatever, is seeing those pieces outlined makes so much more sense than when I was trying to understand that in the audiobook, because like there's a lot of small things that I was just kind of missing from the audiobook. I think that the audiobook did a good job of breaking that barrier for me of like me being really nervous to start this book for some reason, which is funny because I actually really enjoy it. I don't know why, like people were saying that up until like the 70% mark they wanted to DNF it. I don't know why. I think it's actually like very interesting. So I'm gonna keep reading now and see how far we get. I will update you guys once I have like more of an understanding of the story and like any of the, like this has been described as very genre bending, but for right now it's kind of just fiction. I will let you guys know when I see more of the genre bending. Okay, I am currently on chapter 3 and I'm on page 77 right now. I'm realizing as I read this, I'm not technically at the spot where I like left off on my audiobook, but I am at a point where I am not remembering, or like where I realized in the audiobook I was like, I'm not following what's happening. So all of the content now is new to me, but technically speaking at page 100 is where I will not have heard a single word. But something that I'm realizing about this book, there's no genre for this book really, and something that I feel like it
relates to, or what it reminds me of, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is Lessons in Chemistry. I feel like that book was kind of similar in the sense that like technically it was historical fiction, I think. Fiction, historical fiction, something along those lines. I think it's technically historical fiction, but it doesn't like, it didn't read, I don't know, it just doesn't read the same as like another historical fiction novel would, or like in comparison to all the other historical fiction novels. Hopefully I'm making a little bit of sense, but this one kind of feels the same. Like it's more than that. It's like a very smart book. I don't know how else to put it, and that's exactly how I felt about Lessons in Chemistry too. So I'm actually very much enjoying this. I don't know why I was so scared of it. I wish I was further along, and I just simply am not, but it's really good and I'm really liking it. We're just continuing to learn more and more about Commander Gore and our other main character, and you can see that she feels some sort of way about him, but we don't really know what that quite is, although we know from the blurb that I think she starts to fall in love with him, but we're getting like the inklings of that, of like her just being fascinated by who he is. So that's a very interesting dynamic, especially because in some instances it's almost like he is her like grown man's son, except he's not. She's just teaching him everything though, like from scratch, as if he were a younger child, but he's not. He's a grown man. He's in his 30s. So very, very fascinating. I'm liking it. That's kind of all I have to say for right now, but I'm enjoying it. Good morning, you guys. I'm still reading The Ministry of Time. I actually woke up early this morning to read this book, and I'm officially 50% of the way through, like on the dot. I'm on page 166, which is halfway through the book. A couple of things that I'm realizing as I'm reading this book. One is I'm very much enjoying the genre bending. I think I was saying earlier that I wasn't fully getting that quite yet, but now I actually am. It's so fun because there's a little bit of like historical fiction. There's a little bit of like a weird mystery happening, and there's a little bit of like a romance happening, and I'm sure I'm gonna get more of all of those things plus other genres. And then second, I was saying earlier that for some reason, I have no idea where this came from, where this thought came from. I thought this book was set in 2016. It is set in the future because it mentions that coronavirus happened a few years back, or a handful of years back. So I don't know if it's set in 2024, 2025, or if it's set in like a little bit further in the future. I'm not really 100% sure, but very much enjoying this. Like truly, I can't put it down. I'm thinking about my characters constantly. We'll see how much longer it takes me to read, but yeah, highly recommend if you guys want something a little bit different, because this is definitely different. Okay, I just came inside, but it's so fun. This book just became like super actiony. We've been having these weird characters just like pop up here and there. It's so interesting because some of this book is like a little slow, and then there's like action scenes too. And this is, I guess, what I mean by like, it's truly multiple genres. Like it's just so fun and kind of whimsical, and it's just not too serious. It's like a pretty smart book, but it's not too serious of a book. Like it doesn't take itself too seriously. I'm obsessed with it. Like I was not expecting this like action scene happening right now. Oh my gosh, you guys. Okay, I officially finished The Ministry of Time, and I have to tell you guys all of my thoughts about it. Before I even finished this book, I knew it was going to be a 5-star for me. Like, I literally have my reading journal here, and I always write out, I won't show you this month, I'll show you last month, just to not spoil anything for future videos, but I always will write out like the title and then the star rating. And before I even finished the book, I already wrote in 5 stars because I knew that it was going to be a 5-star. This one is so interesting. Like Haley Pham was not kidding when she said this was one of her favorite books of the year. Like this might actually be one of my favorites of the year as well, and it's only March for me right now, but it really is very genre bending. I like a lot of the comments that the author makes about being in between different ethnicities, or you know, like just being like half white, half Cambodian in the main character's case, and something that if you relate to that, you could relate to a lot of the themes in this book with the time travel elements, the romance, like all of it is so fascinating. There was a twist in this book that I did not see coming at all. I feel like maybe I should have seen it coming, but I just like wasn't, my brain didn't even go there. I just think overall it was just so well executed. The ending made me want to cry, but at the same time, because of the element of time travel, I have the hope that it actually ends in a good way, if that makes any sense. Like, because I know that time travel exists in this world, it's like, okay, maybe there's a world where the better thing happens instead of what ends up happening in this book. It almost feels like I
wish that I would have gotten like an epilogue with a little bit more information, but at the same time, I'm glad that they don't spoon feed it to you. So while I wish that I had that info, I have to just, as the reader, make it up myself and kind of guess about what happens, which is kind of fun. There's only one thing that I was like a little bit confused about in this world, where like something happens and it results in something else happening, but it's not consistent across the board, which feels a little confusing. Although I don't know, maybe because we don't have like all of the final details. It was basically just like one tidbit that I feel like wasn't fully thought through all the way. I don't know if that really fully makes sense. I hope it does, but I mean, it's something that I was like very much willing to look over because everything else was a 20 out of 10 for me. Like this book was so good. So definitely recommend it. I don't know why I felt so scared to read this one. This is one that I almost wish that I could have read with a book club because the ending would have brought up a lot of discussion. So really liked this one a lot. Anyway, I loved that book so much. I'm so glad that I read it, and I feel like overall I felt this way a lot with like every book that I read, is that just like I can take the recommendations from these YouTubers that I'm watching and know which ones I'm probably more likely to enjoy, but this one just honestly came out of left field. Whenever I saw Haley pick up this book and like looked at the cover, I was like, I'm not gonna, that one's not for me. And I'm so glad that I picked this one up. Gave it 5 stars. I loved it. And if you guys have not read it yet, I highly recommend giving it a chance. Hello you guys, just popping back in here to wrap up the video. I thought that this video was just so fun because again, I get a lot of my recommendations from all of these YouTubers plus other content creators on YouTube as well. But just to like talk about each of the books and like really dive into them a little bit more and understand why some of my favorite creators might like these books was a really fun time for me. Obviously not all of them were 5 stars. There was only one 4-star though. So I feel like this was pretty successful in terms of like finding new favorite books. Also finding new favorite authors, because I feel like I discovered some new authors through this like little series as well, if you will. So it definitely took me a second to read all of these books because I'm not the fastest reader, but I really enjoyed it. And I think like this was sort of like reminded me why I like watching YouTube book content personally, and like why I like making book content, because I just love talking about books, giving each other recommendations, getting recommendations from other people too. So it was just really fun for me. I would love to make this video again with other creators in the future. I think that it will definitely take me a moment though, just because it does take me a while to read some of these books. But overall, I think that it was just such a fun time and a fun experiment and just like a fun way to get new recommendations. So thank you guys for watching. And if you guys stayed to the end of this video, please consider subscribing. It really does help my channel, and that's all I have. So thank you guys again, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.